The Husker Games are over. Simple question. Did that work? We discuss next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more.
All right, everybody, welcome in. It is Monday, the Monday following the Husker Games at the end of spring practice. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, or Mitch Sherman from the College Football Hall of Fame, 1 for 1 on catching punts.
I am. It was fairly smooth, little bobble, little stumble, but no worries. Nothing bad happened. We'll get to that later in the show.
I cannot wait to discuss this a little bit later on. You were one of the very few with the guts to go out there. So thank you for that. But there was, I think on this show a couple weeks ago, I guessed, Mitch, that you asked me, what do you think the attendance will be inside the stadium? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I said 7,000. And I believe the estimates have been in between 6,000 and 8,000. Which is
almost, 8.
Yeah, it's
my write up. My write up on The Athletic out this morning. I went with 8, which is about 10% of what Nebraska got 7 years ago for the 2018 red-white game.
Yeah, it was a little different. So if you were judging the Husker Games off of its attendance alone, you would say that it did not work, and it was actually a colossal failure compared to what some have been. But we are not judging it off of attendance, or maybe we are not judging it wholly off of attendance. There's a lot of angles to this, and obviously Matt Rule decided to do away with the real spring game as we've known it. So this will be an adjustment over time. There were some other things going on. As you pull it all together and balance it out, Mitch, I guess the question that we start with is this: did it work? Was it a success?
I think it did what they wanted it to do. It was a fun, festive atmosphere. They got fans involved. I think there may have been more people at the garage sale on Saturday morning at the Hawks Championship Center than in the stadium on Saturday afternoon for the scrimmage. I mean, it was what you knew it was going to be, a 60-play scrimmage that involved primarily players who aren't going to be on the field in big moments in the fall. Now, somebody will be. There'll be a player or two from that group, which I suppose you would say is like in the bottom 58 to 68 of the roster. They're not working with 105 exactly anymore, as we talked about a lot last week. So the numbers may have changed. Rule had talked about going a top 57 and then the next 48, I guess it would be not 58, and then a final 10. I don't know how that will change because of what's going on with the 105. But what doesn't change is that the players who were out there for this scrimmage are backups. Some of them are gonna improve and get enrolled. Some of them are probably going to leave the program, and they had their moment. They got to make plays. We saw some young quarterbacks do some nice things. Good to see TJ Lateef and Marcos Davila, I believe is how they pronounced it on the Davila on the PA. He threw a touchdown pass to DJ Singleton. So this wasn't about numbers of people in the stands. I knew that when I talked to Haven Fields, Nebraska's top football administrator, last week, and he said, "Yeah, I've kind of gotten over that, gotten past that. Like we're not going to get 60,000 at this thing." And Nebraska marketed this all spring as just a Pro Bowl style competition laced fan event. And then at the last minute added in a scrimmage. So I don't know that we should get caught up in how many people were sitting in the stadium.
I'd say it's good market research, right? It's you now have the information that, well, I mean, years and years of this should have told you this, but you've now put some examples out there of here's what people care about. Here's Nebraskans' priority. It is football. And so if you're changing a football event into a carnival or something else, then it's just not going to be as well attended. And that's okay. Like we said, like it wasn't football. But if you said it was football and you said they were going to, throw Dylan Raiola out there and Dane Key and Emmett Johnson and whoever else, there probably would have been, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people at that thing. So it's a good reminder of where people's priorities are kind of at. But that doesn't mean we didn't get to see a little bit of Dylan Raiola show off, all the things that, he's kind of improved about himself throughout the offseason.
Right. He threw a football through a hoop from 50 yards away, a basketball hoop. So the arm is still there. Dylan did the Dylan things that we see from Dylan now. He took the mic at the end of the scrimmage. And so you had DJ Wayne, who was out there running things. And then Matt Rule was like the second DJ. And then Dylan took the mic at the end and he thanked the fans for coming. So what we've said all spring about this with Dylan Raiola, and hearing from him last Thursday, and he did an interview on the field after the game, continues to reinforce this point about his leadership, that he is very intentional about taking a new role or an advanced role with this team, and where it may have felt somewhat forced in his freshman season, it's all very natural right now. And hearing Dane Key talk about Dylan Raiola and hearing Ja'Cory Barney talk about Dylan Raiola, both of those wide receivers did quick interviews on the field at the end of the scrimmage. They're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here. They really believe in Dylan. Barney called him a Heisman candidate. Isaiah Hunter, another guy during the spring, who talked about Raiola in like reverent kind of terms. Mm-hmm. So he has accomplished. Dylan Raiola has accomplished here in 4 months of 2025. I think everything that he set out to do in building up his leadership role in the locker room and around the team.
Yeah, he's the clear-cut face of the program. And I think everybody was sort of hoping that would be the case going into this season. And it has happened. Like, I think a good way to, and I guess it's kind of vague and not exactly specific, but a good way to sort of read that is like how do people react to him? When he's out in public or when he is at an event like that, is he a little bit brighter than everybody else? And I do think that, just from seeing all the stuff that came out of Saturday, I wasn't there. But he jumps in the flag football game and people are kind of like, whoa. And he throws the football through the hoop, like something that, he gets an opportunity to do that. He's like, is he really going to throw it? Yep. And he knocks it down. So I think he's got he's starting to let those star qualities sort of show again. Last year was about getting acclimated and figuring out who you are. And now you get to be a little bit more yourself. And I think he's really enjoyed that piece of it.
I mean, it's easy to look back at last year now and say maybe he tried to do too much, because he was trying to be what we saw on Saturday. And I'm not going to make too much about him jumping into the flag football game or throwing the ball through a hoop, but like they're all just like little things that illustrate his objective. Yeah. He tried hard on that last year, and it's tough when there's players who've been in the program for 6 years and you've been in the program for 3 months or 8 months. And now he doesn't have that kind of a challenge. Sure, there are players who've been at Nebraska longer than him, but hey, he's right there. He's welcoming in newcomers. He's on the phone, recruiting them. So I said it a minute ago, and I'll say it again, and it just kind of always comes back to this. To me, it just feels much more natural, the kind of leader that he is.
Before we take a break here, as far as the actual football, was there anything that jumped out to you as far as what we say? You mentioned a couple of the quarterbacks earlier. Any other players that sort of popped up?
I think you feel good about what you saw from the backup quarterbacks. I mean, Jalen Gramstad did not play in this also, so he was there. Not throwing footballs through a hoop from 50 yards away or taken the rope from Heinrich Harburg during the roping challenge. But Gramstad, he's got his role and he's kind of in the background and he's ready to go. If he has to step in, he's ready to go. TJ Lateef, the true freshman, started out at QB, and he, saw from him what I saw from TJ when I watched him play in high school on the Friday night before the USC game in Orange County. And he's somebody who has good pocket awareness and can find his way out of trouble and buy time for himself. Good on the short passes. He went downfield once and there was a miscommunication. Impossible to say if it was the wrong route or if TJ threw the ball to the wrong place, but there was not a receiver nearby and it was intercepted by another early enrollee, Tanner Turch. And then we saw Davila, the quarterback from Purdue, who's a big guy at 6'3" and 235 pounds. And he would fit in well in a Big Ten styled game. Has a nice arm, threw a touchdown pass, also threw a pick. So they're a work in progress, those young QBs. I thought the couple of the young defensive linemen stood out. David Hofkin, who's huge. He wears size 20 shoes, which I discovered while chatting with some people on the sideline. Biggest shoes ever issued at Nebraska. David was so happy, they said, when he got his shoes. That may have been his happiest moment at Nebraska when they gave him shoes, because he has never had shoes that really fit like that, or at least since his feet have grown to their current size. He's pretty nimble for 6'7", 255 or whatever he actually weighs. Had a sack. Maybe somebody to watch, like a real dark horse here in his second season at Nebraska. And I thought Mason Goldman, the third-year defensive lineman who's battled a lot of injuries, was active on the defensive line. And we've known he's a good athlete, but he's needed to get healthy and build size, and he looks like he's maybe on that track.
Excellent. All right. So we'll have some more of that throughout the week and just sort of recapping spring ball and what Nebraska got accomplished as we set things up for summer, when the conversation changes and it gets away from football and it goes a little bit more toward, the other stuff that's happening in college football. But let's take a break and we'll come back with Mitch's own personal recap. Actually, this is Mitch's post-game press conference of him catching the punt at the media challenge after this. But first, the NBA playoffs are indeed here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy for you, even if it is the NBA playoffs. Picking your team to win it all, picking your team to win a single game, picking your team to lose a single game. It happens that way as well. Any way you want to do it, whether it's live, before the game, or a future, you place that $5 bet and you win, then you're going to get $250 in bonus bets. That is for new customers. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com today. Claim your $250 in bonus bets with FanDuel.
All right, welcome back. Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman. Connor Happer, 1620 The Zone, is with me. So let's talk about this. We talked about it plenty last week, and leading up to the Husker Games, Matt Rule had invited, Nebraska invited. Found out a little bit more about Matt Rule maybe being behind this and the puppet master of all of the media challenge events on Saturday. We were invited to participate, to be a part of the festivities, and as the days grew short before the spring game, it looked like we would be catching punts. So I accepted the invitation, along with Sean Callahan from Husker Online, Kevin Suits from 1011, the TV station, CBS affiliate in Lincoln, and then Damon Benning, ex-Husker, part of the Husker, the radio crew, the Husker Sports Network, Huskers Radio Network. He was also involved. Damon was mic'd up, and my understanding, Connor, I don't want to talk this whole time, but my understanding of the sequence of events is that Damon Benning, being a former NFL player, successful college player, Orange Bowl MVP, was going to mentor us, other media folks, on how to catch the ball. Like, you need to get under it and cradle it, like whatever. I've never caught a punt. Like, let's be serious here. We didn't get any mentorship.
No.
Damon went out there.
That. You're gonna get one shot, and that's what happened. It seemed like
they wanted to throw us to the wolves, and Matt Rule, I think in particular, wanted to throw us to the wolves. So Rule had been.
This, by the way, I support Matt Rule throwing you guys to the wolves.
Yeah, that's fine. He had been fairly involved in the festivities leading up to the media challenge, which took place after the third quarter of action. Rule really got into it when Mike Eckler got on the bench press. So they were doing like the strongest man challenge, and various Nebraska players were pushing 225 pounds of weight on the bench, which for a 20-year-old defensive lineman is very much in the range of what you're expected to be able to do. For a 53-year-old special teams coordinator, he's in good shape. But
he's jacked.
That's wow. He did 13 reps.
That's pretty
amazing. Pretty amazing. Yeah. And then Will Compton sat down, who's about 20 years younger than Mike Eckler, and did 15 reps. So shout out to Matt Rule for donating $130,000 to teammates Matt and Julie Rule as a result of those that challenge. There were no donations associated with the media challenge. I sought the advice before I went out there from George Darlington, because I saw him in the press box, and George coached the Nebraska return specialists in their heyday. Hey, Tyrone Hughes, Dana Brinson, DeJuan Gross. Many great Nebraska return specialists. George, as the secondary coach, doubled on special teams in that area. And I said, hey, if you're going to give advice to someone who's never caught a punt, what would you say? And he was very interested in helping me out. And he said, what I told the players when I coached was, pretend like you're catching a baby that's being dropped from a 3-story building out of a fire. You've got to use your arms and use your legs and just kind of let it sink into you. Nothing rigid about it. And then down on the field, before this all got started, Ed Foley gave me some unsolicited advice. He, of course, Nebraska's former special teams coordinator, still with the program in this ambassador type of role. Ed wears many hats, does lots of things, and he was very involved in the Husker Games. He told me to keep my elbows in and to kind of lean back, and just that was about it. That was about it. It was quick advice. So Damon didn't really do anything to help. They were calibrating the machine as he went out to the 50-yard line, and Rule called him out. And the first couple of punts that they shot toward Damon were a little bit out of his range, but he went for them and didn't catch them. And then he caught the third. So, okay, good job. And then Sean went out and he missed the first. Yeah. It was over his head.
That was the one. That was the clip that I saw. And very clear, like you said, that that was part of the plan. We wanted something like that to happen. And boy, do we have video forever. I'm sorry, Sean. This is just, I know you caught the second one. Congratulations. But we all have that video forever and ever and ever. Crystal clear 4K.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people aren't going to remember the video or remember the moment of the second punt. Nope. To him, it's the drop. And that's what I said when we started talking about this, Connor. I said, I don't want to be a meme. I don't want this to be a moment where I'm out there and get embarrassed. And it's probably, it's not going to be a big deal for Sean, but I didn't really want to be a part of that. So I stepped up right after Sean, and I did catch the punt. I had to back up a couple of steps. I don't know how smooth it looked. Some people say that I talked to said it looked great for 50 years old. Nice. Others said it looked like you were going to fall down. I was worried you were going to fall down after you caught the ball. It did not. I couldn't do the catch a baby thing because that would work really well for a punt that kind of goes straight up, covers some yardage and then comes straight down at a steep angle, and you can bring it in. The ball was coming at more of it wasn't as a steep enough angle to be able to do that. So I just kind of had to lean back and just take it right off the chest and bring my arms up to my chest. And the ball bounced a little bit, went up maybe a few inches in the air, and I grabbed it. And Rule tried to get me to do a second one. He said, another one? No. No, I just avoided the embarrassment. I'm not doing a second one.
Good job. You took you hit one of your numbers on roulette the first spin, and then you took your money, and the dealer said, "Come on, more." Yeah. And you said, "No, thank you. I will take my money and I will leave this casino now." Good job by you. That's knowing exactly what was going to happen next, because they probably would have cranked up the machine and made it a little bit more difficult. So good job by you. That's
Kevin Schutz also caught his first punt.
Good job. All right. So sorry, Matt Rule. It didn't end up as embarrassing as you wanted it to be. That's because we got a bunch of media around here who they show up when the moments matter the most, when the brights are their lightest, when the lights are their brightest, right?
The stage is at its biggest. Yeah, that's right. There were a lot of people there. I tuned out the crowd. It was as if I was doing it in an empty stadium.
Nice. That's exactly right. You put the blinders on, you just go play. That's what they always say. You put the blinders on and you just go play. So did you hear any sort of ahs reaction from the crowd after you caught the punt? Did you get it? Did Nate Rohr announce that you were going to catch it or anything like that?
No, because Rule had the mic at that point. So he did announce the names as everybody stepped up.
Okay.
And Rule was trying to coax Sam McEwen down to the field. Sam was not a part of it. He was not on the itinerary. But Rule wanted him to be very clearly.
Speaking from experience, that mic's got a lot of power. You could make people do some things. But coming out of the 6-story press box and getting down to the field, probably not going to be.
I mean, most of the media watched the scrimmage events from the field level. There was very little going on in the press box.
Okay, good.
And Sam was down on the field earlier, but maybe in anticipation, and this would be a veteran move if so, maybe in anticipation of being called out by Matt Rule, he moved back to the press box when it got to that point of the festivities. So there was no way that he could get down there in time. So he didn't have to do it. But
big time players make big time plays, Mitch, and that's you. You're a big time player now because you caught that punt, and it doesn't matter, bobble, no bobble. They don't write that in the scorebook, baby. You catch it, and that's the story. One caught punt, Mitch Sherman's career. That's it.
Yeah. All right, that's probably enough talking about the punt. I hope you're still with us on this episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. We're going to come back and dissect a little bit more of what happened Saturday at the Husker Games and talk about what it means moving forward for Nebraska. That's next. I'm going to tell you right now, though, about Gametime, because there's nothing like the live energy of watching a game in person, whether it's a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until Gametime came around. Gametime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. The prices on the app actually drop as the event gets closer in many cases. And with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front. There are no surprise fees at checkout. Part of the reason that I love using Gametime is because of the priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute seats for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, any kind of live events. Get there with their zone deals. You get peace of mind. You get seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee. Book with total confidence when you use Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, welcome back on a Monday. Connor Happer and Mitch Sherman with you. Just a couple more notes to before we get out of here. So the transfer portal closed on Friday before the Husker games, notably as we talked about it. We are probably still in the zone right now where you'll see like the stragglers and the paperwork going through and stuff like that. So I wonder if there might be a little bit, a couple names that trickle out there today of guys that go into the portal or announce their future plans or something like that as far as the roster is concerned.
Yeah, you could expect that. There were a player or two who were not around on Saturday at the Husker games, and I think it's probably best. I mean, we're not talking about starting caliber players or players who are notable in the two deep even necessarily, although maybe one that you could have seen in the two deep. I think it's best to let them have their moment because I don't know and haven't confirmed like why someone wasn't there. The expectation is yes, there will be a couple of players from Nebraska early this week, who show up in the portal. So look for that, and when it happens and that drops or their announcement comes, then we'll talk about it here on this show. But for the most part, Nebraska made it through without any kind of big numbers. I think at one point at many points in the lead up to the portal opening, you and I agreed, hey, something's going to happen that's going to be kind of disappointing, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock to the system. Maybe not in the same category of like an Ernest Hausman leaving a couple of years ago and going to Michigan, or Jamari Butler leaving in December and going to LSU. But usually when the portal's open, something surprises surprises us, and I think they're going to make it through this one. I think without anything in that category.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. There was a couple guys working at different positions. We normally see offensive linemen go to defensive line go to offensive line. There was a couple of those examples at the Husker games on Saturday. But here's one of note. Remember Vince Genatone? He is from North Platte, correct?
Yes, he is. Played at Montana, was a sprinter at North Platte, and at 200 plus pounds, he's listed at 225 now on the Nebraska roster. I don't think he was much off that in high school. He ran a 10.5 100 meters.
So he had been a linebacker, special team type of guy. He was working with, drum roll please, the running backs on Saturday, which is something that he did throughout his high school career. And you mentioned his speed there. Kind of interesting, given Nebraska's lack of depth, particularly at that position right now.
Yeah. Still no news on Marty Brown, the running back from Omaha Creighton Prep, who was at North Dakota State last year, ran for 1,100 yards, visited Miami, visited Nebraska last Thursday. And we wait on Marty Brown's decision. Maybe some negotiations that are taking place that has to be taken into consideration in the portal today. Of course, at some point there will be or were negotiations. So if Nebraska's looking at Marty Brown and trying out Vince Genatone at running back, you can see the level of uncertainty there with Emmett Johnson entrenched, and you have Quentin Ives. We saw Mekhi Nelson in the spring game on Saturday, and there wasn't a moment like we had last year with Dante Dowdell where Mekhi Nelson went tearing off down the sideline for a 70-yard run. But I think they're looking to add a piece, and I don't know that I'm comfortable saying like, oh yeah, the answer is Vince Genatone. With Vince Genatone, it just hasn't clicked at linebacker in a couple seasons of being in college. And he had 3 seasons. He redshirted at Montana and then was a redshirt freshman and then redshirt sophomore at Nebraska. So you're just looking for a way to get an athlete on the field. And he's found that on special teams at Nebraska. A couple other positions or position changes that were noticeable on Saturday. Landon Davidson, who was an offensive lineman that Nebraska signed out of Colorado last year, and then Ian Flint, a tight end from Texas, was an early enrollee in the program at this time a year ago. They are both working at D-line at the moment. So another position like running back where Nebraska's seeking depth, and the hope or the objective here is that they can find some depth by moving pieces around their own roster so they don't have to go to the portal.
One more note before we get out of here. The NFL draft finished up over the weekend. Ty Robinson was the first Husker off the board, drafted to the Philadelphia Eagles. I did see the video, which was great. Cam Jurgens was doing a little panel, and somebody in the crowd said, "Hey, the Eagles just drafted Ty Robinson." He was like genuinely like, "Whoa, no way, that's awesome!" So that was pretty cool. Ty Robinson goes to the Eagles in the 4th round, off the board before Shedeur Sanders, by the way, and Thomas Fidone goes to the Giants in the 7th round. No other Huskers were drafted, but many others picked up undrafted free agent deals.
Yeah, Ty Robinson those are both good stories. Ty Robinson to the Eagles, Thomas Fidone to the Giants. Happy for Thomas Fidone just because 2 knee injuries. Things looked a little dark after that second spring of his in the program, and he'd seen 2 ACLs, and he's a guy who came into Nebraska, I think, with injury concerns just because of his body and some issues with flexibility, and he found a way to power through and turn himself into, he's not a finished product, but not many guys are going into the NFL, and now he's a draft pick, and he's going to have an opportunity to make a team and work even harder at the game of football. He's a professional football player now, so best wishes to Fidone for sure. Ty Robinson is I think going to fit in well in Philadelphia. I think they're going to like his style of play. The Super Bowl champs are, and it was fun to see some of the internet chatter about Ty Robinson. Remember last year at Nebraska, he played quite a bit of fullback or whatever back you want to call that at 290 pounds, paving the way for Dante Dowdell to score touchdowns. Did it in the Pinstripe Bowl for who scored? Was it Ives? Was that or was that Ramir Johnson? Anyway, he's played offense, and the Eagles, of course, are known for the tush push. And
that's right, but they're trying to get it banned, right? They're trying to get it outlawed.
Yeah, so maybe the new version of the Eagles' unfair play can be Ty Robinson plowing over some linebacker, and the Eagles can still have an unstoppable short yardage play thanks to an ex-Husker. It was Cam Jurgens, at least last year, after Jason Kelsey retired, who led the way on the tush push.
All right, that's it for us today. Plenty to come throughout the week, recapping more of spring ball and starting to look ahead a little bit. We appreciate you making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Locked On NFL Draft, Damian and Keith are still rolling, recapping the draft for the next couple days, and you should tune into that and make it your second listen. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.